have a spinal cord. Our spinal cord is connected to our brain, and it's a very important part of our body. It helps our legs communicate with our brain. It has a lot of functions in the way that our body operates, and if our spinal cord gets injured, it is a devastating thing. It can lead to paralysis, where you can't use your legs or your arms sometimes. It can also lead to just straight death if your spinal cord is injured. And so we have vertebra, which are bones that kind of hug and encapsulate this. But it's not one big bone, so that we're straight upright all the time and we can't move our bodies. We can flex our bodies around because they're actually separate, and they have discs between them that enable us to flex them, right? These animals that we'll talk about today have no backbone. They have nervous systems, they have nerves, but they don't have a backbone. And so that's how one of the ways we classify animals is vertebrates and invertebrates. Okay? A vertebrate has a backbone and has vertebra that protect the backbone, that protect the spinal cord. But let's remember how we think about animals. There's characteristics. What is an animal? How can we classify the animals? And then we're going to also talk about the diversity of invertebrates. What makes an invertebrate an invertebrate? Partly we've talked about that so far, the idea of no backbone. Where do they live? What do they eat? Here's a couple of examples. Jellyfish.
They don't have a spine.
But they are an example of an invertebrate. Okay? Another one is coral.
They don't have any.
Coral is an animal, believe it or not, it's not a plant, that has no backbone. Okay? Finally, tube worms, or really any kind of worm, is also an invertebrate.
They don't have any backbone.
So let's review some of the different characteristics that are shared among all the different types of creatures that we've talked about over the past few months. Remember, there was animals, Animalia. That was one of the kingdoms, right? One of the other kingdoms is Plantae, where plants live, trees, flowers, bushes. Fungi, or fungi, which is where mushrooms live, also slime molds and other kinds of things like that. And then there's also Protista, which is examples of like yeast or other small microscopic organisms that are not bacteria. Okay?
Not Protista.
We're not talking about bacteria necessarily, but we are talking about microscopic organisms. And when we say Protista. And so, let's talk about the cells. Does anybody remember the two types of cells? Eukaryotic and prokaryotic. Now, Hope, I want Hope to answer this. I want to see if she can guess. You have a 50-50 chance. Are we eukaryotes or are we prokaryotes?
Prokaryote.
We are eukaryotes. Why? Because we have distinct nucleus inside of our cells that holds the DNA. Whereas a prokaryote has no nucleus and the DNA just kind of flips all over the place around inside. All right? All of these kingdoms are eukaryotes. Only bacteria and animals, and organisms like that are prokaryotes, right? So we all have a eukaryotic cell system. We have a nucleus, all of us. Okay? Now, some of these lack a cell wall. Some protists have cell walls, some don't. That actually share a characteristic with plants. Some fungi have cell walls, most don't. All plants have cell walls.
Who wants this?
And no animals have cell walls. So it's funny how they said this. It says lacks a cell wall. It should have said has a cell wall. And then these two would still be the same. This would say all and this would say none. But no animals. We do not have cell walls. Okay? We do have cell membranes, but not cell walls. Okay? Let's talk about our cell organization. Are we multicellular or not? Some protists are multicellular. Most fungi are multicellular. And all plants and animals are multicellular. So there are some single-celled fungi and single-celled protists.
How is there a mushroom that small?
No, it's not a mushroom at that point. The mushroom is the example of the multicellular fungi. but there are some that are single celled, right?
Fungi.
Okay. Whichever you like. Finally, heterotrophic. This is referring to how they eat, right? All animals are heterotrophic, meaning that they consume many different things. Plants are not, except for parasitic plants, right? Plants are homotrophic or autotrophic, meaning that they produce their own food.
You mean
Well,
like the
man,
Venus, the Venus flytrap?
Then let's change it to autotrophic. Say again?
I wanted one of those.
Venus flytrap is probably an extreme example of a type of plant that probably does produce some of its own food, but it's also able to derive food from carnivorous behavior. It's like a carnivore.
I mean, don't all plants take in nutrients from outside of themselves?
Yes, but they can produce their own food. They use those nutrients to produce their own food, whereas we cannot. We cannot produce our own food from sunlight.
Mommy, I didn't
Things like
imagine
that,
all
okay?
the meat sticks.
So,
What do you define as food as? Don't the nutrients count
Sugar.
as?
sugar is just really kind of the basic.
And you have
Building
to make,
block of
you have to make the sugar, you can't just get it.
Everything depends on sugar.
The way we get those sugars is from plants.
And
Plants
the
produce
get the
sugar.
sugars,
Okay?
and the sugar
You're not gonna find sugar anywhere else. Naturally.
and
But
the
sugar crystals
and
then
the
like
sun-
from a plant then? Or is that
Cane
different?
sugar, cane.
So the way that we derive the sugar and package it and sell it is one that's been refined and crystallized, because it's simpler to transport it and use it when it's crystalline. But certainly plants don't have a giant sack of sugar that's hanging off the side of them. The sugar is dissolved in their and their guts.
Does all sugar period come from a plant? Or is there other sugar that doesn't?
Honey.
Well, but that is derived ultimately from a plant, right? And so what I'm talking about is the idea that we can't get food outside of the involvement of plants.
Is there no artificially created sugar, or is it all plant created?
I'm sure that we as humans have gotten smart enough that we can make artificial sugar, but the way that the ecosystem and the food web works is having a basis in plants. If plants cease to exist, we would see life so quickly go away.
So then, it means that there are no natural sugars outside of plants.
I believe that's true. I don't think you would ever find a sugar existing in a rock, or having come from a volcano, or whatever other process that might be able to provide the energy needed to create the sugar, right? The sugar is created by glycolysis in the case, not glycolysis, the breaking down of sugar. The making of sugars, right? Photosynthetic processes, the Krebs cycle, that's how we're able to put together the energy units from the sun to create sugar.
well,
So, let's move on before we run out of time.
so Dad.
Invertebrates and vertebrates. Today we're talking about vertebrates.
Daddy, I know what plants do to make sugar. What the sun does is it gives the soil and sun give the plant supply. So then the plant makes the sugar. Then we take the sugar.
Yep. So, let's talk about symmetry. The kind of symmetry we have is called bilateral, meaning we can draw a line down the middle of our bodies and there will be a mirror image on either side, right? Coming here, I've got two eyes on either side. My nose can be split in half into two nostrils. I've got arms on both sides. I have legs on both sides, right? Coming down, straight down the
You
middle.
have these
Okay.
things on both sides.
People have
Belly
symmetry.
on both sides.
We are bilateral, okay? But there are many types of symmetry found in animals. For instance, there's a spherical symmetry with some animals, like for instance, certain bacteria. Streptococcus, I think, is an example. That's a sphere. It's literally a ball. It has spherical symmetry.
What it can do is
Okay.
it can multiply. It can make itself stronger by multiplying itself and attaching it until it's 3 balls.
Yes, it could form a colony, right? It could form a
Maybe
colony of
Zipper
different streptococci. What?
What is the common?
I think there's probably a way to describe a spherical bacterium.
I feel like Streptor probably has a circular function.
I just streptococci. That's what I said.
Stop.
That's the name of that particular bacterium. I think cocci refers to the spherical nature of it. So
I was wondering.
I don't know if that's probably the right word or not. I don't know.
I was wondering whether that bacteria had a common name. That would be Streptor in this case.
strep would be the manifestation of our response to the presence of the bacteria. And I think it's so intermingled that they named the bacteria
Or like
the
maybe.
thing. Or it could be that we named the disease after the bacteria. Okay. Next is radial symmetry, where you have a center point on the animal, and if you draw out from there, you can see different kinds of symmetry. For instance, a starfish has radial symmetry, right?
Or a jellyfish.
If you think about a starfish,
Dad,
yes?
technically you wouldn't be perfectly symmetric because your heart is on one side.
Quack.
So the technicalities don't change the discussion, okay?
Physically, you would look the same, but not,
Bend your mind. Cause the perfection of your mind to be flexible so that you can remain present and engaged in this conversation.
Dad,
Rather than encumbered by your need for perfection to make sure that what I'm saying is right.
Dad, and also if you cut a starfish's legs off, they would all be triangles, and the starfish itself would have 9 sides.
I think if you do that though, it will actually grow it back. Or else even if you cut a leg off of a starfish, it might even form a new starfish
If I
from that one
promise
leg.
to,
I remember hearing that. Anyways,
why
radial
does it
symmetry,
do-
right? Okay, another example might be an anemone, right? It's a tube that comes up that has little things on top.
Somebody else.
We can imagine a point in the center that if we continue drawing circles around it, we'll continue seeing the same shape of the animal. That's radial symmetry, okay?
Daddy,
And then finally, some of the worms we'll learn about have bilateral symmetry, meaning that you can draw a line straight down and see how there's kind of mirror images on either side.
That's people.
Spherical, radial, bilateral.
Dad,
We are bilateral. Yes, Luke?
did you know that anemones, they actually eat baby jellyfish? Sometimes they can grow under jellyfish eggs,
Molluska.
and right as the jellyfish drops from its egg, they just snatch it up and eat it.
That's time check if you know how to do that eventually. There's nothing in here to tell me what time.